We don't give a about Ellie De La Cruz. Go ahead and put that on the beginning of the show. Look, what we care about is the Cubs winning baseball games. And watching Ellie De La Cruz steal home is great as long as it's against Milwaukee and the Cubs are picking up a game or two in the standings because of it. We all appreciate a good player, right? But what we're worried about is what this Cubs organization is going to do to find their Ellie De La Cruz and then develop that guy.
We're getting ready for Cincinnati.
Cubs Baseball Channel back at it today. Chuck Walter, Mick Gillespie with you. Chicago gets started in a huge home series with the Cincinnati Reds. 4 games at Wrigley Field. The last time Cincinnati came to Wrigley Field, they were sitting at 21-29, ended up sweeping the Chicago Cubs. That was a completely different Reds team. And here we are today, Cincinnati sitting in first place in the division, but Chicago right there as they enter the last day of the trade deadline. So much to talk about, so little time. Mick Gillespie's got to hit the road and get up to Pensacola for a little meeting. So this is a rapid-fire show. And in the meantime, yes, he's showing us the Ryne Sandberg autographed baseball. That goes to one lucky fan after we hit 1,000 subscribers. And I think the way we're going to do this, Mick, because we asked yesterday where everyone's commenting from, and we had so many good stories of fans from San Antonio and Buffalo and South Carolina on why they like the Chicago Cubs. And it all comes back to WGN, their childhoods. They'd be sitting in their room and they just fell in love with the Ivy. And that's why we do this for you. So many people out there, regardless of where they live, love the Chicago Cubs. Cincinnati Reds sent Andrew Abbott to the hill today. He's their ace, no doubt about it. 6-2 with a sub-2 ERA on the season. Abbott has been incredible. Everyone talks Hunter Green. They talk Nick Lodolo. Andrew Abbott has no doubt been the best of those 3 pitchers. He goes up against the Cubs workhorse. It's Marcus Stroman, who some people thought maybe would be on the block and wouldn't be a Chicago Cub today. It is Stroman who's going out there. So battle of, I think you could say Justin Steele is the ace for Chicago at this point, but battle of 2 very good pitchers today in a massive 4-game set.
Yeah, and guess where Andrew Abbott started the season? Pitching for the Lookouts, and the team, one of the teams that he beat was the Smokies, and it's because he throws his pitches for strikes, he keeps the ball down, and he's got a good changeup, and he's hard to hit, and then he's gotten to the big leagues, and he's been fantastic, and we talk about development all the time. The Reds did a great job of letting the guy go out there and pitch, log in innings, work through the lineup, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Right, and I know, your analytics say we don't do that. Yeah, right. You do that because the 3rd time through, you're learning a lot. It doesn't matter what the outcome is when you're with the Lookouts. It matters when you're in the big leagues, but you can learn a lot about a pitcher by seeing what they do to the lineup the 3rd time around or how they're affected by it, right? I remember Kyle Hendricks being a guy who used to get through the lineup 3 times when he was coming up with the Cubs. So this is an interesting battle. The Reds wouldn't be where they were or where they are right now, and that's in first place. 4 games over the Cubs, a half game over Milwaukee, if it wasn't for Andrew Abbott. And who would have thought that? Hunter Green reminds me of Nolan Ryan, just the way that his fastball is just so heavy, and he's able to throw it in the upper reaches of the zone, and it just moves the same way. He looks just like that. He's not there. Nick Lodolo, you talked about him, another top-end lefty. He's not there. The Reds are still in first place. It's because Andrew Abbott. So for the Cubs, they're going to have to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. The Cubs have scored a lot of runs during their streak. They still have won 9 out of 10, even with the loss yesterday. And it's because they've scored a lot of runs with 2 outs. They're going to have to continue that. But, the way that he's pitching right now, and he's a hot pitcher, I think you just got to capitalize on the opportunities when they present themselves.
Marcus Stroman takes the bump for Chicago today. Stroman has had a great year. Unfortunately, he had a horrible month of July, an ERA upwards of 8. He has one last chance to rectify things before he hops into the month of August. Do you think he does that tonight? Have you seen anything about his game lately that makes you think fatigue or just some tough luck?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think when you look at his career, he's struggled with injuries, and a lot of players do. When he's healthy, he's fantastic. I hope that the Cubs don't take their foot off the gas, because the report came out yesterday. Hey, we took Bellinger off the market. Okay. If I'm the GM, if I'm Jed Hoyer, I'm not letting that report come out. Even if that's the truth, I'm not letting that report come out. I'm just going to be a devil's advocate with the other teams, and we'll talk and we'll talk and we'll talk. And then I'm not saying anything. I'm not showing my hand because I like the intensity that the guys played with up until yesterday, right? I mean, you win all these games, and then all of a sudden the report comes out, hey, we're not trading, and then, you get shut out. So, it's like, sometimes having a little bit of internal pressure on your team is a good thing. The Cubs prove that. The goal wasn't not to sell. The goal is to win the division and then win the World Series. And the Cubs are going to cost themselves the chance to do that in the future by not making some of these trades. So that means that this season now matters. And if the season now matters, the goal is to win these kind of games. And Marcus Stroman's been very vocal this year. He always is. He wants this. I'm sure he's one of the guys in the clubhouse that's been, pushing for these guys to win these games, and he's done his part. And tonight it's time to do his part again. So, maybe the pressure of not thinking you're going to get traded will help him out a lot, because I'm sure in the back of his mind through his last few starts, he probably thought, hey, I'm going to be on another team.
At one point this season, the Cincinnati Reds had 7,000 fans show up to one of their games. It was the lowest attended game in Great American Ballpark
It's the Reds.
history.
What do you expect?
Fans were showing up, Mick, with the sell the team Bob shirts.
I saw those.
And the ushers had to come over and say, sir, we are aware that we suck, sir, but please take off the paper bags. Mr. Castellini says it's not nice. So, I mean, the Reds were an absolute shambles. However, those fans that were watching the farm system just develop slowly and slowly. And you said this. You said, watch out for Cincinnati. It's just a matter of time before they're coming.
Yep.
And it was right around that Cubs series when they were 21-29, came to Wrigley, swept them, went to Fenway, swept the Boston Red Sox. And that's right when Cincinnati called up Matt McClain. Things started turning around. Ellie De La Cruz joined the mix. And next thing you know, Cincinnati won 12 games and was in first place over the Milwaukee Brewers. What has changed so much about this culture in the Queen City?
Well, there's a lot of competition, and that's good for positions, because Ellie De La Cruz is going to play. Matt McClain is going to play. They both play shortstop. Oh, they already had a guy playing shortstop, so McClain slid over and started playing second. De La Cruz he's kind of like, as far as Reds are concerned, he's like an Eric Davis type talent, or, would it be blasphemy to say that, that he might be the next face of the game? Is he the next Reds Barry Larkin? He could be. I saw him in the minor leagues. The analytic guys love him because his exit velocity is just off the chart. He's the first guy in recorded history to have three at-bats where he had an exit velocity of over 116 miles an hour. That was in I think a AAA game playing for the Louisville Bats, but he gets to the big leagues, and I'm not surprised at all. The steal of home that he had was electric. He just plays the game at a different level, and the Reds needed that. But McClain is a steady player as well. Jonathan India was a good player, and, I mean, he might not be with the Reds here in the long run. They may trade him, right? The Reds have dealt with the same thing that the Cubs are dealing with right now, and it's like, knowing when to fold and knowing when to hold, and that's a tough part about the game. And for GMs, they got to decide if they're willing to do that. And a lot of times what happens is you fire the GM and the next guy comes in and he does it because the guy that's in there at the current time doesn't want to make that, those decisions. But the Reds are a team that is up and coming. I love the fact that this team has Joey Votto. You have all of these young guys that are coming up there, and now you got Votto, who it could be in the last year of his Red days, or maybe
he still bangs. Joey Votto still hits homers.
I know, and what I'm saying is that you love to have that veteran guy who's spent his entire career with one organization, who's revitalized by the Ellie De La Cruz and the Matt McClains. De La Cruz said, "Hey, we're going to win the World Series." I mean, when's the last time somebody said that without a scowl on their face with the Reds, So but he believes that. You got to have that kind of belief. And then when you flip the coin and you say, okay, where's the Cubs' Ellie De La Cruz? I'd say the closest thing to it is Pete Crow Armstrong, but he's a different player. You know, he's not a 50 home run player, but he is electric like that. He's not ready yet, though. The Reds were patient with De La Cruz. They didn't force him up there, and the Cubs have to do the same thing. You know, I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. I think the struggles that some of the former Cubs that won the World Series are having right now, they're having those because the Cubs didn't do a good enough job of developing them in the minor leagues and making them go through the struggles. You've got to learn in this game how to work through struggles. And if a guy just sails right up through your minor league system and he gets to the big leagues and he struggles, it's a lot harder for that player to figure it out. I know that in this day and age, we're going to cut minor league teams, and I see the Angels will just draft a guy and move him right to Double-A, and you know, they think that's going to work. It's going to end up backfiring. There was a reason why we had so many different levels of baseball until you got to the big leagues. We still do, but not as many, and it's because it's a skill game, and you've got to learn the skills, and it's also a mental game. My dad used to say 90% of it's upstairs. You know, I watched Christopher Morel play, and he's got all the physical ability, but you know what? The mental part of it sometimes beats him. You know, yesterday, runs right by a ball in the outfield, and you know, it kind of started the Cardinals off, and that's something that he does a lot. But then he'll hit a 3-run homer to win you the game, you know? So spending the time in the minor leagues to make those mistakes and learn from them is going to help your prospects when they get to the big leagues. I'm not saying I want Morel in the minors. Don't get me wrong. It's too late now. He's just too good of a player at the big leagues. But that's what happens. When you put those guys like the Kyle Schwarbers in the big leagues and they can't catch, but they can hit, and they can hit as well as anyone, you're not bringing them back. It's just the way it is. So you got to do it before they get there. The Reds did that. They were patient, and look at where they are right now.
Cubs fans had the what's the word I'm looking for here? They were blessed, I guess, to see the rise of Aristides Aquino and then see him fall as quickly as he did. But it was that Cubs series where Aquino went for about 8 home runs. It seemed like everything off the bat was just, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's the type of power that Elly De La Cruz brings to the table. When you see a left-handed, not as powerful from the right side, but when you see Elly De La Cruz up there left-handed and he connects with the ball, now he'll strike out a ton, which makes some Reds fans a little bit worried that, you know, maybe – but look, he already hits the breaking ball better than Aquino ever did. So I think his trajectory, and he's just better on the base pass. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's better than Aquino ever was at any point. With that being said, when Elly De La Cruz connects 117, 118 miles per hour off the bat, upper deck jobs, this kid is something special. And he's 21 now, so let's not call him kid. This man, this grown-ass man is something special, Mick. Are Cubs fans allowed to enjoy him, or do they very much dislike him? Like, where do they stand right now? And tell us in the comments with Elly De La Cruz.
You want me to tell you the truth? We don't give a about Elly De La Cruz. Go ahead and put that on the beginning of the show. Look, what we care about is the Cubs winning baseball games. And watching Elly De La Cruz steal home is great as long as it's against Milwaukee and the Cubs are picking up a game or two in the standings because of it. We all appreciate a good player, right? But what we're worried about is what this Cubs organization is going to do to find their Elly De La Cruz and then develop that guy and be confident in the farm system and not be so hung up on analytics that you don't develop guys. But also, don't ignore the analytics and take advantage of the tool that they are. You know, and it's a fine balance that all of the teams have to do to build a roster that would contend with the Reds. And who cares about the Reds? I mean, they're part of one of the worst divisions in baseball. The Cubs need to be contending with the Atlanta Braves and with the LA Dodgers. So bottom line to me is, how do you get this guy out? And don't let him take over this series, because this is a crucial series for the Cubs right now, Charlie.
One thing that it goes.
Is that a good answer?
It's a great answer. The first part of it's definitely clipped at the beginning of the show. So
okay, put it in there.
The people get to hear that twice.
And look, you guys that are commenting all the time, we love the comments. I mean, we love it. Some of you guys go at me. Some of you guys go at Charlie. Some of you are so nice. Hey, I'm in North Dakota and I'm a big Cubs fan, or I'm down in Mexico and I'm a Cubs fan, and you just give a thumbs up. Look, we love it. This is your bleachers. We're hanging out. You're at the bar with us. I turned the Yingling sign on just for you guys. Charlie's got his tequila. That's what this is all about. So you want to get on there and talk your smack. I love it. Just be respectful of everybody, because, look, We're at a bar. We don't need any bar fights.
Yeah, amen. We don't want the bouncer to come down.
We don't want Charlie getting thrown out. He's a smaller dude than me. They'll pick him up and toss him right on out the door.
Smaller dude. Easy now. The base pass. We don't talk about it much just because it's such a small part of the game, you would think. But Cincinnati is a merry-go-round right now on the base pass. I mean, they are moving at all times. You look at TJ Friedel, Ellie De La Cruz, Jake Fraley, Jonathan India's on the IL. You won't see him. But Matt McClain, every person on the roster, Will Benson, aside from Joey Votto, who's not running on anyone, can swipe some bags, which brings up the question, how do you feel about Chicago's catchers in this series against one of the quickest teams in baseball that if you let them get on base, if you walk a few batters, if Stroman has some command issues early, Ellie De La Cruz is a nightmare on the base pass.
Yeah, look, and they've nerfed the rules of Major League Baseball to make it easier to steal. You know, you're limited on the things that you can do. The bases are bigger, which means that you get there faster. And the pitch clock, I can't imagine Ricky Henderson with all these advantages. You know, we say, oh, Ronald Acuna is doing all this and that. Look, if Ricky Henderson was playing in this day and age, Lou Brock, some of the great base stealers, they would never not steal. I mean, you couldn't stop them, Well, what the Cubs did is they went out this year and they got guys that David Ross, who's a former catcher, felt good about, that are good defensively. I think they can throw some guys out, but they need help from the pitchers. A big part of this is holding the runners on. And I know with the pitch clock, you're in a window when you have to throw the ball, but they don't know exactly when you're going to throw it, So you've got to be strategic in the way that you do it. You've got to hold the guys close to the base, and hopefully they can slow down the run game. But it's been one of the things that has made the Reds a really formidable team this year is they're taking advantage of the new rules.
It's the last day of the trade deadline. By midnight tonight, it's over. It's finito. The Chicago Cubs, you would think, look to be who they are. At this point, what are they targeting? What are the chances they get something done?
Well, I heard from a little birdie that expect maybe some guys from the upper levels of the organization could be dealt to help the Cubs with maybe some help with a right-handed bat, maybe a relief arm, and that the Cubs are not going to trade their top-end prospects. So it might be like, guys that are middle-back type of prospects. I was trying to figure out, who that might be because I don't know how they value guys. Just because it says in the prospect guide that this guy's a prospect, I don't think Brennan Davis is a prospect, but the prospect guide tells me he is. I think he's a great guy, but he's just not – he doesn't compare to Pete Crow Armstrong, to Alexander Canario, to Jonathan Perlaza, even Cole Roeder to me. I just in my mind, so I know he's hurt right now, but they may consider him a top-end prospect. I don't, so who do you consider a top-end prospect and who don't you? Now, doesn't mean that he doesn't go somewhere and turn into a great player, but I'm just saying in my mind, if I'm the guy, then I'm kind of holding those guys in esteem, and then, maybe I would move a guy like him. So I'm curious. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded Jake Slaughter. I just get this feeling that they're, for whatever reason, they're not super impressed with him. Although, like I said, the guy's going to hit 20 home runs for the second consecutive year in the minors. He's already over 20 doubles. He's got that big athletic body. Maybe you trade him. We've talked about the Cubs needing a third baseman. Maybe a team would take him. I think they would. I don't know what they think about Hayden McGarry. He's a player that has come onto the scene and made a splash. Last year, he was an amateur. He was like a Division II player, and he's learning how to play first base at the Double-A level. But he jumped all the way up to Double-A from being in the developmental Appy League last year. When I say developmental, I mean a college wood bat league for college players. So he's been very impressive. He can hit. Something tells me they probably consider him a pretty good prospect. I don't think they would move B.J. Murray. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious. It's not like this organization has a ton of pitching prospects, but they do have some good arms. And, I've talked about it openly that, I'm just very underwhelmed with the development of pitching. Maybe if you're another organization, and I've talked to scouts from other organizations, they tend to agree with me, at least the ones that I like. And maybe that's why I like them, because we all kind of see it the same way. And if I'm with another organization, maybe I go look at a guy like Ryan Jensen and go, they can't figure it out with Jensen, but the guy's throwing 99, 97. He's got, nothing moves straight. He just can't repeat his delivery. Maybe we can make that happen, and then all of a sudden you put somebody either the back end of your bullpen or a starter spot, and and they end up being a pretty good pitcher. So that's what I'm kind of looking at. Now, what would the Cubs get back? I keep hearing Jeimer Candelario, who was a Cubs minor leaguer that was traded, switch hitting third baseman. Hey, I'd love him. I mean, just because he's a great guy and he can play a little bit. As far as bullpen arms go, I have no idea what direction they're going to go. It depends who's available. And right now, I mean, what we're seeing, there are some pretty big prospects being traded. I just don't know it's a seller's market, so I just don't know what they're going to demand. But if I'm the Cubs, I would rather stay put than make a bad trade and give up a minor leaguer that's going to help me down the road, because you might not have Bellinger back. You might not have Stroman back, who knows who's going to get hurt? Seems like that happens all the time. So your best bet is just continuing on this path of building within the organization. You just don't want to give another team one of the guys that could have helped you.
I want to throw out the word prospects, because everyone, when they hear it, they don't like it. Prospects, to me, is a word that just means potential, and potential to me is a word that means you have not done anything yet. So when people say, the Cubs are trading for more prospects, it's an eye roll. I want to hear the word talent. Cubs are trading for more talent. And they could have returned a ton for a Cody Bellinger, a Marcus Stroman. Look, the circumstances of the Cubs winning all these games in a row and climbing within 3.5 games of the division, it made it an easy decision to ride this thing out. But you look at the Cubs farm system in 2015, right when they were on the cusp of winning a World Series. They had Chris Bryant, Addison Russell, Jorge Soler, Carl Edwards, Kyle Schwarber, Almora, Torres. I mean, that was their top 7 right there. Mm-hmm. And then you look at a few years later in 2018, a year before they were on the cusp of doing nothing, and it was Alzolay as their top prospect. And then it was Oscar De La Cruz and Alex Lang and Brendan Little and Thomas Hatch and DJ Wilson. Just a completely different farm system. Where do the Cubs stack right now? You've been with the organization since 2007. You'd give the 2015 installment of the farm system an A+. You'd give the one I just gave you, I'd imagine, like a D. Where do they stand right now in terms of letter grade?
Yeah, look, and not only did they not have talent, but they developed something else that is very it is like cancer to winning, and that's elitism, like after the World Series throughout the organization. And that's something that Jed Hoyer, I think you just can't. If you're not there every day, you don't know what I'm talking about. I've been there every day. I've seen this. I know what's going on. Like, to beat that is the way that you start to rebuild a mentality of going out there and earning it, right? Not like, hey, we won the World Series in 2016. Well, shit, it's 2017. It's 2018. You didn't win this year. You won 2016. And look, I cover Alabama. That's the mentality that Alabama has. That's why they win a lot of championships, because you once you win it, you got to put it away and start working on the next thing. And that was impossible for the Cubs to do. So we got far enough away from that, and we only have one player left from that team. And it does break my heart, because that team is so special to all of us, including me. But Kyle Hendricks is the only guy left. So, not only do you not get the pick high because your team's winning a lot, and then, you're trading away your best players, and you're not getting, the players that you're getting back aren't winning World Series for you. So it really does kind of, there's a lot of different elements to go into a bad farm system. But, you're right. No, the farm system now is really good. Very good. And it's as good as it's been. They don't have the super elite guys besides Pete Crow Armstrong, but they have a lot of guys that are so close to turning into that you want to really just be patient and see who that is. Like every time you turn around, someone else is doing something, and you're like, man, this guy can really play. Alexander Canario, who was hurt At the end of last year, he was the guy that got back from Chris Bryant as a center fielder. We're not even talking about him. He's a great player. You know, like Jonathan Perlaza, a switch-hitting power dude, great player. You know, but what's that turn into the big leagues? Nelson Velasquez, I think, is a really good player. What's that turn into the big leagues? You just keep on doing that. It's like a shotgun. You know, if you throw enough BBs in there, you know, maybe one will puncture. You know, and so that's what the Cubs are doing right now, and that's what makes this system so good. They've got pitching as well. It's just a matter of, you know, how they develop it and how those guys are able to transition to the major leagues. But you want me to compare it? I think it's one of the best in minor league baseball. I mean, there's just so many good players, especially position players.